All right.
Yeah.
Well, we only scratched the surface. We talked about this even an hour and a half before we hit record, and we still didn't scratch the surface. So that means there's a lot more out there. But let me just kind of talk about a little bit of what we did talk about. Christians, who this is for, apologetics is the defense of the faith. One of the ways that we can help our families defend the faith is through proper education. Deuteronomy 6, after the Shema, the most basic and primitive and important command to the Jews at the time, especially in the midst of the paganism that they were a part of, God said, "And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children. You shall talk to them when you sit in the house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise. You shall bind them on the sign of your hand, and they shall be the frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on your doorposts of your house and on your gates." Jews today also do this specifically and literally. This isn't just, teach the ways of God. This is, here's how animals procreate. Here's how to get the best crop. Here's the way that God set up the world. Here's the way that God commands us to do to do economics, to have not uneven scales, to be fair, to respect the Sabbath. All these things were done not just in those movements of sitting down and lying down and talking with them. All of it was under the guise of, this is God's world, and we act in such a way that honors him in everything that we do. And it's also in what we teach our kids. It's what we are commanded to in Scripture. It's what we as Christians want to do as well, because we love our families. We put our wives before us so that we can honor them and give up ourselves as Christ gave up himself for the church and for our children. You know, to have parents die for children, giving kidneys or lifting helicopters off them, are normal. They're positive reinforcement to us, because they cry out for a normal response to us of, yes, and that's what I would do for my family. And so finding the right way to educate your kid is you building that dynasty in them that God commands each of us to do. As men, we're commanded to lead our family. And so be active. Even if you do homeschool, be active and care about what your wife is teaching, because it is ultimately your responsibility, just as the pastor is responsible for your salvation walk and growth, to be absent from that and just say, well, I put the curriculum on the table because I make the money, is doing a disservice to your family. Be involved in some way and do that. If you're not homeschooling and you cannot do it, find the best way, as Jeff talked about. Be a Christian when you talk to the parents. Form those relationships. When you talk to the teacher, you want them to go, oh, I'm not used to parents taking my advice on, here's supplement material to help them understand it. Perfect. Do those things. Don't, we see the worst on there. We see the worst on TikTok of them wanting to corrupt your children, and you may experience that too. And so one of those ways is through finding alternates in ed, and you have to care about your kids, because you understand, as we've talked about in a number of books that we've presented on the show, there is no neutrality. You're either Christian or you're not. You're either doing what God wants or you're not. And that's what the other side also believes. And you want them to believe that, because that's the way that God has created everything. And so, again, we talk about these things from a worldview perspective, and education is extremely important in the worldview perspective. It's how our children are seeing the world, and we want to be involved in some fashion with that. The most being homeschooling or some type of alternative education where we're not sending them away for 8 hours for Caesar to put, make them into Romans, is the line from A Better Man Than I goes, Vadibakam, for anyone who has missed that citation. And so build the dynasty in your home. Be the leader that you want to be. And wives, if you need to have that conversation with your husband as well, if you're convicted for it, that's a positive sign. And if public school is the way to go, then be involved and understand that you have just as much of an uphill battle if you have a 9-to-5 job and have to come home and catechize your child out of what bad stuff that they learned, or putting those things that they learned into proper context through a Christian worldview. And so each way that we're doing it, put strengths, put weaknesses. The socialization aspect, I think, has come a long way since the lockdowns. Probably one of the only positives of the lockdown is realizing that homeschool families aren't as weird as what you thought they were, and has become a numbers game. So where 1 million homeschool people might have been weird, 3.2 million is becoming less weird. And so we spread the weirdness out. and we've also realized what socialization is, and having the co-ops is helping that too. And having churches care about what happens to their congregation outside of just Sunday is also helping that. If you're working 2 jobs, 3 jobs as a single parent, you can find a place in the church, or people that care about your kids just as much as you do, but you care about them more. And so that's why you find the right path and care about it, because this is what we're called to do as Christians. And this is what we want to do as parents who love our children. And so this is a fuller expression of that in a mindset of caring about our family as we lead them in the way that God commands us to. So Jeff, where can we go for more? And does the Albertan Parents Union, can any good thing good come out of Canada? Will it help us Americans who are vastly superior and more freedom mindset, especially these last 3 years? I mean, we've been super freedom mindset. That can the Alberta Parents Union help us with education choice as well?
Well, until this year, I would have said Alberta is the jurisdiction you should look to in an English-speaking jurisdiction to follow from a school choice perspective. I can't say that anymore. Now you should look at Arizona, and then if you want to see what a older, more before some of these innovations that we've talked about version of this might look like, you could look to Alberta, but Arizona unfortunately has surpassed us, and basically Florida has promised to the next time they have a legislative session. So we're gonna get outrun by 2 places that have significantly better weather than us.
It's hotter. They can move quicker there.
Yeah. There you go. I always, every time someone recommends a policy that worked really well in Vancouver, I always say, okay, was that policy responsible for Vancouver's weather? Because if it wasn't, I don't think that's what gets people to move to Vancouver. I think, I think unless that policy can cause Vancouver weather, that we might have to attract people with freedom. But yeah, Alberta has a world-class education system because we have had so much choice in education, so much parent empowerment for so long. Alberta has been third in language arts, third in science on the last set of internationally normed tests, which I've said, internationally normed tests, not the be all and end all, but at least it's a thing you can measure to rank jurisdictions. And Alberta came in third on language arts, third in science, and 8th in math, behind only Quebec, where we send all our money, and in Canada, and before we went through one of those discovery math fads in this province, we were first in Canada in math, and I'm comparing us to the rest of Canada because obviously that makes that's where we would be most comparable, but also because that's Alberta. I know the school choice landscape in the rest of Canada even better than I know it in the United States, and Alberta is far and away, not even close, way more school choice than anywhere else in Canada. And so but even among all education jurisdictions in the world, third in language arts and science, eighth in math. So we've had a world-class education system, and it's not because we don't spend more on our education system. We're pretty middling among similarly rich jurisdictions. It's not because we pay teachers more, although we do pay our teachers better than a lot of places. But it doesn't really, the studies haven't really been able to bear out any relationship there. It's not because of our curriculum. Our curriculum's like 50 years old. The only thing the last three parties that have run this province agree on is that it's really old and needs to be rewritten. So they've all tried. It's not because of class size. Like I mentioned, we had a big class size initiative during which class sizes increased. We had that class size initiative because our class sizes were actually fairly large for OECD countries. It's because we have choice in education. It's because we have parental empowerment. So that's the main thing I would say that Americans can learn from Alberta. It's not the presence of oil does not make us smarter. Okay, it's not cattle that makes us smarter. Because then Texas has more of both. I think it's parent empowerment. It's the ability for parents to be able to guide the education of their child more, to let families make these decisions over kitchen tables, and that I would say is the model that Alberta can have for the rest of the world. I would say that that is what we should expect as Christians. That God did not put man in the garden and say it's not good for Adam to be alone. Let me send him a bureaucrat. He sent him a wife. He established the family first. God understood that the family takes precedence and that the family is the first most necessary government before anything else. So that giving primacy to families to make these decisions is what we should expect from Deuteronomy, yes, but all the way back to creation. And so I would say that is very much in keeping with the world that God made, the world we should expect to see if Christianity were true. So
there you go.